Thank you everyone for hanging in till the end of the day. This is the best bit and the hardest bit to keep you engaged in, so hopefully we'll be doing a good job. Everyone has assured me that we'll be having a very interesting and exciting conversation as opposed to monologues, which you will not be getting from this panel. They have all assured me. And Amanda never does monologues, so I'm confident with that. Okay, so we have a wide-ranging set of topics we want to talk about today. We're going to start sort of broadly with what's going on in the market. We're very lucky to have a diverse set of views in the panel. So we have some linear, some purely digital, some mixed on the panel. So I'm sure we'll be having a lot of interesting perspectives. Then we'll go a little bit into the talk that we've been, I think the subject that's been at the center of this industry for some time, this shift between linear and OTT. How is it happening? How quickly is it happening? When is it going to come to the region? Has it come already? What's it likely to impact? How does this impact existing businesses, future businesses, and so on? And then within that, talk a little bit about content and its importance in both, in all aspects in terms of original content. A little bit about sports content, because we have a particular case in the region in terms of how that's changing. And then telecom operators and their role in terms of partners or not with the media sector. And a little bit about the government and what it can do to help and what it shouldn't do, of course. So,
sorry, turn me off.
Okay.
Just a joke.
Okay, I think we'll start with Manoj. The ladies and the gentlemen on the panel, I think, don't need any introduction. If any of you don't know who they are, then you're probably new to the media sector in the region. So we'll go without intros. Manoj, we'll start with you in terms of overall market overview. So, it hasn't been the best of times for some time now in terms of the media sector. Where are we? Have we hit bottom? Are we recovering? Are there any sort of lights at the end of the tunnel?
So when it comes to content as such, I've been always saying that linear or OTT or a digital streaming is just a mode of distribution of content than a business in itself. In this region, of course, the last few years have seen huge drops. I believe in terms of advertising revenue, this region, of course, was reliant on that. Over 50% of that particular revenue has dropped. So if you're looking at somewhere in 2015, when we were, including Egypt, talking about $1.2 odd billion in net, not the gross, but in net realization for broadcasters, that has probably fallen down to about 600. Egypt's currency devaluation, of course, didn't help many broadcasters. A couple of them were even out of the market. Distribution has also fallen with, especially in the South Asian segment, one platform winding up this year has taken that particular dip. The good part is, of course, content consumption has not fallen. There is a huge increase in content consumption. If you look at the number of OTT platforms, we've launched 2 OTT platforms in the last 3 years, one Arabic, and this year, of course, we launched our South Asian pay OTT platform, both doing extremely well in terms of content consumption. Are they doing very good in terms of making money? There are other OTT platforms on this panel outside. I don't think money has come or yet to be seen on digital platforms. They are all surviving, and at least we are all surviving based on our linear revenues. OTT has yet to see monies. Okay. So that is the current state of this market at this point of time.
I'm going to get to Danny and Hamoud on this point, but if we can just, Tracy, do you agree with this perspective that content consumption is increasing? If so, and advertising is going down and pay TV has not been doing, region traditionally has always had a struggle penetrating in the region. If consumption is increasing, who's financing all this additional content that's being consumed?
I think that's a great question. From a Viacom perspective, we're lucky that we're sort of slightly removed from the consumer, or to deliver the content out. Content, to the point of your first question, is content being consumed? Absolutely, and it is as we know, the biggest driver. You say it's a distribution model that people have a variety of ways that they distribute their content out to their potentially paying subscriber, and I think that you have to. We definitely have diversified in how we deliver our content. Oh, thank you. So we have diversified in how we deliver our content. It's not an isolated model. I think it's likely more of a challenge for my SVOD friends that they are reliant on a subscriber ultimately to directly pay them. I think when we are content producers, and so it's a slightly better position to be in, but I think we are all in general challenged in the way content is consumed, how we get that return on investment, and ultimately if the model is not fixed, then we won't be able to afford to make the content because we don't get the money back. So I think you have to be fluid and flexible in who and how you get your content out there, and really build an appetite for it. You have to ultimately be really confident that what you're pushing out, people will consume, and whether that's advertisers paying because they know you get the eyeballs, or whether it's subscribers directly subscribing to your service. I think that the first instance has to be the content that you're delivering.
Okay. Amanda, you're in the position where you have channels that are bringing international content in the region, but you also have local channels that need to create Arabic content. So has the economic climate affected your propensity or your attitude towards investing in the local channels or in the local content?
Yeah, look, I think it's a really interesting time. Everything is shifting, So the traditional model for a company like ours, where we had a few key exclusive partners in the region who paid a premium for our channels because they were exclusive, definitely that's changing. On the other hand, I think there's huge opportunity. So my starting point would always be that if you are producing fabulous content that people want in some way, shape or form, then you're in a good place. Clearly the monetization is changing over time. The sort of conversations that we are having and who we're having those conversations with are changing. But our view is that as long as you're in control of the content and it's your IP, you have a choice about what you do with it. So globally, we are doing a few things. We're getting into aggregation with Dplay, where we put all of our content onto our own platform and position that in the market, which is doing incredibly well in Nordics, UK. We just launched it in Japan, in more mature markets. But at the same time, we have an alternative play, which is more view and do in a very deep consumer vertical. So if you think about what Discovery does, if you want adventure or science or food, travel, home, all of these very deep verticals, golf, now that we've bought Golf TV. So what we're creating there is a direct-to-consumer proposition where you can watch, but your passion can be enhanced because you can do something as a result.
Okay, can I just pick up on something? Because traditionally what happens in other markets where the media sector is in a better state, if you were a traditional broadcaster and you're doing well financially, you take a hit on starting up your operation in terms of digital or OTT or whatever we want to call it, and direct to consumer. You invest a lot of money in it. You're willing to take a hit on your P&L because you have a healthy business, maybe not growing anymore, but it's a healthy business on the linear side. We don't have that here in most cases. So how is this shift happening?
Well, as I say, I prefer to limit the comments to what I'm seeing that we do, and you're absolutely right, that our traditional business is funding, our development, and I think most people are trying to do that. So you see that with NBC, with Shahid, you see it with, OSN trying to fund Wavo, so it's a balance, and the question is how can you run your core traditional business as efficiently as possible so that you can invest in future-proofing. But again, you have to continue to make the content investment because otherwise you have nothing to offer. My point is, it isn't just about watching the content. Where we think we can win is in watching and then doing something about it. So you watch something, you want to make the recipe. Now we've just launched Genius Food Network Kitchen in the States. It's linked into Alexa and you get your groceries delivered so you can then make the recipe. Or with Golf TV, have a lesson from Tiger Woods, improve your swing. So there we go.
Mahmoud, we'll go back to the question then. Manoj said that he sees digital or OTT as purely a different way of distribution, but that sort of implying that it's really a different way of getting to the same content to the consumer, but it's not that much of a change. You're in Integral, you obviously, well, first, do you agree with this statement that it's only a change in the way of distribution, or do you see it as a more profound change in either business model or in consumer behavior?
I'm talking about Saudi Arabia as our main market. The criteria of the Saudi market is a bit different due to the fact that the population is about 70% below the 30 years old. So the way they usually adopt new technology is very flexible. It's not as talking to a mature market where it's a bit difficult to introduce a new theme or new platforms. So what we have done, we are a Saudi company backed up by the largest telco in the region. So this gave us the edge in trying to develop the best platform available, being a content aggregator, give us the edge that we can accommodate the majority of the content provided in the region, and gave us the advantage that we have an excellent reach via our telco to reach out to our customer base. For an example, the Saudi population is roughly about 32 of Saudis and non-Saudis, and out of them, STC as an owner of our company own more than 60% of the market share. So this could give you an idea about the reach we have. So such a reach make it much easier for a newcomer to go and try to introduce a new platform and to introduce a new content. In our scenario, we have done some focusing on some of the new contents which is not available as the local content, and this is where we even went into production. We have on the pipeline for this year, 2019, 10 original production. One of them is a cinema movie. So we are trying to cover the lack in the market, on the Saudi market, for the youth and for the content they need.
Okay. But just to go back to the point you mentioned in terms of ownership, if you were not owned by STC,
Say again?
if you were not owned by STC, if you didn't have the backing of a huge telco that had lots of cash and already had lots of access to lots of homes, would you start Integral? Would you want to have this business?
If I can raise funds, definitely I will do such a business. I mean, Netflix wouldn't jump into it if they did not raise a good fund.
Okay.
Definitely for the others.
Danny, I want to touch on something that you told me outside, if I may. So typically, it's always sort of positioned as OTT versus linear, and this is sort of a competition, it's either or kind of thing. You're telling me something interesting outside about how you're about to announce sort of a linear distribution aspect to the service. So how do you see this relationship between yourselves? Because originally Stars Play was meant to be, another disruptor. It's the Netflix before Netflix arrived in the region type of thing. You've been doing very well by all accounts. But now you're looking at linear distribution. So how does that play in the mindset? Where are we today as a pure play digital, but who's looking at linear distribution as part of their package as well?
Again, I think it goes back to the fact it's about distribution. It's not about whether it's VOD content or linear content. It's about having great content that people want to watch. Really, when we look at our distribution platform, the market has changed fundamentally. You don't need to have a satellite box anymore. You can have a Samsung Smart TV, you have an application, you can have Apple TV, you can have all these products. So what they've done is really, brought the content decision really truly to the consumer. And I think that's one of the biggest shifts that's happened with OTT. Consumers have so much more choice at such a better price and so much more option. The days of having to sign a 12-month contract to get your set-top box and whether you keep this and that have disappeared. So I think for us, what it's more about is bringing those same consumers via a distribution platform that's in their home great content. And there's great content on VOD, and there's great content on linear.
Okay, I want to challenge this a little bit because two things. Yes, absolutely, great content is the table stakes. You can't be in this game if you don't have great content. But one of the examples you talked about, it's not a comparison here for the consumer between a 12-month contract and VOD, right? Or SVOD. It's a comparison between free
Yes.
and paid, and then it's a comparison between laid back and linear, everything coming into my home for maybe not a lot of money, depending on which service you're providing, some of which are disrupting the whole legal structure of the system, versus getting something that's SVOD, that's much lower cost per month. So it's not exactly in the consumer's point of view, I don't see it as the exact same equation. I'm not a US household that's comparing $150 cable bill to a $14 Netflix subscription. It's not the same. So what is it, it's not only about content. Isn't the business model different for you here? The convincing the consumer to actually buy your service is the same as if you were convincing an American consumer?
I think it's about choice, right? So I think, we're not an advertising service, we're a paid service, we're a subscription.
Do you see that continuing?
Do I see that continuing? Absolutely, I see that continuing, yeah. Yeah, and we can talk about why, but yeah, I see that continuing. So for me, it's about providing, number one, the consumer choice. Now, does that just happen through content? Obviously, it's driven by content, but it's also delivered by experience. We can deliver an application to a customer that has brilliant UI UX, has brilliant information about the content, has a recommendation engine, and gives the user an experience as well. So, for us, it's about providing that experience. And then I think the price point is about, if you've got a choice between free and 250 dirhams, and you've got a choice between free and 40 dirhams, it's a very, very different choice to make as a consumer. And this is why I think the VOD services, the subscription VOD services with their price point, has a chance to fight for that viewing of the customer by bringing amazing content, by bringing it with a really intuitive experience that's easy to use, and then at the right price. And I think back to linear and VOD, for us what we want to make sure is if the consumer wants to have a laid-back linear experience, they can. They can watch it, they can go into the same application and watch it on the same platform. If they want to select a piece of VOD content, they can. So really, I think, some of our aims for 2020, and similar to what Integral have done, is we want to really be able to consolidate product together to give you one simple experience in your home.
Okay. Tracy, from what you've seen happening in other markets, obviously every few years you need to renew your distribution deals in the region for the channels. One, how do you think it will shape up in terms of where the money is and how quickly it shifts? And two, from your point, do you foresee a point in the near future where you might say, I'm going to completely forget about regular satellite distribution and I'm going to totally commit, in key markets at least, to OTT or IPTV distribution?
I mean,
Or do you care?
Of course I care. I think that if anyone sat here and said they are only providing their brands or their channels or their content in one place to one provider, would be a very limited view. And I think if we look globally, Viacom distribute their content in a multitude of ways. Of course, our relationship with, we have exclusive channels on OSN, and that will continue. We have a great relationship with them. They are the gatekeepers to some of our brands, and the exclusive experience of linear that also has the the kind of digital side that people can access. That said, yes, it's very important. No, I can't see that changing in the very near future. But at the same time, we have to look at how our content and our brands in particular are being consumed or where they're touching our audience. So for us at Viacom, probably the single biggest thing that we've done this year locally in the region was the Kids' Choice Awards in Abu Dhabi. So the Nickelodeon Kids' Choice Awards was an event that brought together music stars, slime, activities for kids. It was, it's a global franchise that we have immersed into the region. So it's not, I don't think we can see our channels or our partnerships or our business in isolation of one another. I think that we are expanding what we do. So I feel a little bit like I run an events company at the moment as much as a traditional broadcast channel business. But that's the beauty of it, is that there is no one hard, fast answer. That this model doesn't work and this model does. We have great relationships with my partners here on the stage through our content deals. So I think that we don't have one thing that we have to decide. We have multi ways of exploring business opportunity.
From what you see, though, in terms of what's happening and the data that you have, and to Amanda as well, the same question. Do you see that the shift here happening slower or faster than you see it in other parts of the world in terms of how content is being consumed, whether it's on the satellite and linear, totally linear, or versus on digital and on demand?
And I can be clear that in terms of ad revenue, we now make 60% of our ad revenue is coming from our digital and social rather than linear. I think that's probably got more to do with geopolitics, possibly, but certainly we're working hard to develop a direct relationship in the digital and social space. It's really important. And to my earlier point, it's challenging. I mean, let's be honest, Discovery for the last 30 plus years has been a B2B company, and now we're trying to become D2C. So there's lots of experimentation going on. There's a lot of acquisition. I mean, luckily we're a cash-rich company, so we're able to buy rather than having to build organically, and that's been very helpful. But we are making this shift. And to Tracy's point, yeah, I mean, we've just hired a consumer products person here. We're having very interesting conversations in the region about a science museum, about various Discovery properties for location-based entertainment. So I think that we're fortunate that we have a brand with a brand halo, and it's a question of how you can monetize that in an authentic and credible way on any platform. But what I would say is that in markets in the States, for example, where we've been tremendously successful with getting the content to people under 30 who don't watch television in the traditional sense. So we're optimistic because we know that our content resonates with these people. In this region, it's slightly different because we are tied to deals currently with partners. But we'll see.
Okay. Manoj, same question to you. If you're going to put a timeline for where your income would be coming more from D2C as opposed to through linear distribution via partners in the region, number of years?
Well, in this particular region, we started off and we still have a very healthy pay business. 2008 is when we launched our free-to-air business. Free-to-air business, this is the only part in the entire globe where we run free-to-air services. We may have a couple of free-to-air services back in India, but they are more of complementary services to our pay television services. In the pay segment, almost currently, when the advertising market is a little subdued, we are experiencing almost 50% of our revenues coming from advertising, and balance 50% comes in from subscription. If we didn't have that, I mean, it would be difficult to run our free-to-air products. So in terms of partnerships with almost everybody, telco or the DTH platforms in the previous regime, they were the end pipeline. Telcos were always providing great services, and they added one more in terms of entertainment. And that partnership will continue. Almost all our, not only regional but global distribution deals are minimum 3 to 5 years. So if we really look at that, the next 5 years will definitely be that way. There are quite a lot of people you have seen at the international levels of the big boys, the HBOs or the Disneys pulling out content either from distribution partners or from other OTT platforms where they have redistributed their content. That would be there, but ultimately you would need a pipe to reach home. You can't do it without a distribution partner. So you know what? A lot of us, if we really, a few years ago, if we asked which industry we were from, very few of us actually said that we were from the content industry. We said we were from the television industry. And about 5 years we've discussed and probably done to death the death of television. I grew up with 21-inch and today I have a 100-inch at home and I really want to get a larger television. It's content in the ultimate we are streaming in, and I think we are all content producers, aggregators, and creators. And that's the real business we are in. And if you really look at, at OTT levels, we were doing some analysis since we own both OTT as well as linear channels. For us, OTT as a business was very successful in even terms, I'm just talking consumption. I'm not even going into monetization of OTT services, where the commuting time from home to work or work to home was much more larger. So I see that a lot happening in India. But here when we look at any of the OTT service many of us consume would be on our large screen. If you look at the production values which an OTT platform actually brings in, or any of, look at the production values of Viacom or a Discovery brings in, it needs to be consumed on a large screen. And I think probably Danny would actually say that if you look at really consumption levels here, mobile may be in certain markets here, but here it's definitely going to be the large screen there. You need multiple distribution points. If we try and block out, I have had a lot of challenges with distribution partners, especially telcos, in other markets. They want to take rights for OTT or at least catch up for their OTT services. That's one more distribution point for them. But otherwise, yes, of course, this partnership is going to be pretty long.
Okay. Hamoud, I want to get your opinion on something also that Danny said. So he's... Come in?
I cannot hear you.
Even now?
Just bring it a little bit.
Okay. Is this good? All right. So one of the points that Danny raised was today you don't need a set-top box, you don't need anything in your home because it's OTT, you can put on your smart TV and get what you need. Jawi TV obviously is on mobile, on an app, but also you have a box a set-top box that people need to put in their home. So do you see this as an interim strategy, or do you see that having the set-top box is essential for you to control the household, especially since you have an aggregation strategy? Because the other thing that's a bit worrying from, if I'm sitting in an aggregator's perspective, is when I hear everybody saying we're going to go direct, we're going to go direct, at some point it's going to stop making sense for them to go through anybody else. So how do you see that affecting your approach to entering homes?
In regard of integral, what we are trying to do is to provide two options. One is the platform, which is as an app, TV app, where you can have it in your mobile and you can have the feature of casting to the big screen. And this is similar to, say, Netflix module. In regard to the home, we are providing the set-top box. And the set-top box we are providing it so far in Saudi, Kuwait, Bahrain, and Oman via the telco available over there. For us, what we are aiming for is to be the mega content aggregator, where for the time being we are negotiating with all of the major content providers, such as, if I talk about Netflix, Amazon, and even Disney. We are trying to bring them along to be as an app in app, where we will have them in our application and we will have them in our set-top box. This is just to provide our customer base, which is the largest so far in the region. We can provide them a sort of full bouquet of all of the options available in the market. We already have a good relation with Stars Play, where we have their app in our set-top box and in our application. It's a sort of an agreement, alignment with them, where we are utilizing the reach. Due to the fact that we have a better, maybe, reach to the customer base, this is where we are trying to go with even the competitors. We don't consider any one competitor. We consider everybody as a partner. It's a long-term relationship to reach, to achieve what we called win-win strategy, which is, this is where we want to achieve.
Okay, so from your perspective, it's the fact that you have the large existing base through the STC link that makes it more interesting for providers to go through you as opposed to go direct. That's the summary.
It's not going to be only STC. What we are mandated by the investor as STC to go and penetrate the whole MENA region. So I'm authorized to go and cooperate in regions where STC is not there, with telco and multiple telco.
Okay.
So I'm building a customer base via my base, which is Saudi initially, and after that we are expanding in all directions.
Okay, Danny, so you need to explain something to me now, because you're planning on putting linear channels through StarsPlay. StarsPlay is sitting on Integral's platform, which also has linear channels. Z is doing the same thing in India, as far as I understood. At some point, it's going to be like that movie, Inception, was it? Inception? Where everything is like within everything. So at some point, it's going to stop making sense, right? What's that point? Or does it not ever stop making sense, and you agree how to split the partnership? How does this work from a partnership perspective? Discovery is going to be in the same scenario at some point. To them, maybe today the Middle East is not that interesting, so if there's a partner who has access to the biggest market and the biggest share, great, that's the easy route. It's a substitution of the old pay TV distribution model, but then maybe in 10 years the Middle East is amazing and there's a lot of money being left on the table because of the middleman. So when is this going to...
I think, you know, the industry, where the industry has changed so much, because we talked a lot about linear or VOD. What's happened to the industry is distribution has become much simpler, right? We don't need the set-top box anymore to distribute. So now we can get our product to customer in a very, very simple way. And we can do that with partners. All of us can. We can all take our product and we can distribute it by many, many different partner products. So the conversation that used to be about, you know, having to win a customer, get them on a box and get them to watch doesn't have to happen. For me now, more the conversation is, how can I make my product available to as many people to access it as possible?
I agree.
The question is not, to me, is not about linear versus VOD, it's about monetization. That's the big question for the industry.
Let's go back to that. Okay, it's about monetization. You're adding linear, it's not about linear. You were adding linear because that gives more choice to your consumer.
Correct.
Integral, who is your partner in distribution, is doing the same thing.
Yes.
So at some point, you're going to either have the same product sitting twice in the same platform, or you're going to decide, I no longer need to go through Integral. Or Integral might say, you know what, StarsPlay is becoming a threat to me because they're trying to go after the same content partners I want for my platform, so I'm going to kick them out of... Does this lovely partnership last forever?
No.
Or does it break down at some point?
But let me tell you why, you know, we work very closely with Hamuda, and let me explain why. Because we can complement each other as well.
Exactly.
We don't all need to go out there and buy all the content from every person and try and bring it all together. You know, as Hamuda explained very truly, they're producing amazing new Arabic original content. Mm-hmm. Our big focus today is not Arabic original content. Our focus is premium Hollywood content. So the two of us can come together and actually then bring a more rounded offering to the customer through the simple distribution methodology at the end of the day. So, you know, I think it's more about, you know, brands creating their position. You know, I'm not going to go and get exactly the same channels as Hamuda. Doesn't make sense. What I am going to do is bring products that I think fits in with my brand, fits in with my strategy, that can complement my partners and make sense through their distribution. So I think it's more about that. You know, is there going to be some fighting over rights? Of course, there already is between partners. But I think this is a business today where acquisition costs are high, prices are low, margins are tight, right? I mean, you don't have big margins in this business and you're sat on $5 to $10 ARPUs. So collaboration, working together, utilizing your content together, utilizing your distribution together is probably the only way that all of us sat on this panel will make any money. Otherwise, if we just carry on fighting and fighting for this distribution, this and this, It'll just be cost. And that's where I think it matters.
Yeah.
It's good they're listening.
Yeah, but I mean, I would completely agree. I think that the model is so disrupted, the traditional model is so disrupted for reasons that we're all aware of, that this new ecosystem that we're trying to create is really crucial. And if you're in the happy position where you've got lots of content, you can choose which content to put where, because frankly, it's all a huge experiment. We need to see which is going to be monetized best. And that's why we wish to, try to keep our options open. We'll do D2C, but we'll also do aggregation. We'll work with the people on this panel, which we already do. So, it's a question of finding which things work in this region, but also globally. It will be different in different places. You have to have the freedom to be able to do it. And as I keep saying, that comes back to having your own IP.
Okay, which is a very nice segue to our next topic.
Oh, there we go.
Thank you, Amanda. It's as if we
Glad
coordinated.
to be of use.
Okay, so everybody's talked about content. Everybody's talked about the importance of owning your IP, because as you've given many examples, Tracy and Amanda, in terms of how it can generate revenue and connect with consumers outside just broadcasting or consumption on a screen. Today, we are in a scenario where content is very expensive, where a lot of the producers, and it keeps getting more expensive, whether it's sports content or drama or so on. I don't think we've ever hit a market where the cost goes down over time, and it tends to always go up. Yet you are in a very competitive market where ARPUs are not that high. Pay TV has stalled a long time ago, unless someone would like to challenge that. Free-to-air is dominant, but then you have free-to-air operators who are trying to defend their turf, but at the same time also play a digital play. So if I'm a producer today and I go to a broadcast, I doubt there's many broadcasters that I'd accept that they would take linear rights and then let digital rights go to somebody else. So when you go out to create original content, are you now competing with broadcasters? Are you partnering with broadcasters? Is exclusivity still essential, or is it negotiable? Well, what's the general perspective? And I'd like to go across the board on that one.
Well, I'll give you a specific example. So again, it comes back to this sense of trying to be more collaborative and create an ecosystem. We do a lot of work with Roya TV in Jordan in the food space, where we create content together, and then each of us decides what's going to be the most valuable way to monetize it. At this point, we take pay TV rights first, then they take a free-to-air window, and then we take a digital window. And it seems to work quite nicely for everybody.
Do you think that sequence will stay the same?
I don't know, but I mean, I think the point is that it's easier to create content together. Mm-hmm. So I think there's an imperative and an interest to do that.
Okay. Danny, you don't have a free-to-air window, or you don't have a pay TV, you just have, it's the one window. So how important for you that whatever urgent content you put on your platform has not been seen before?
I think, again, content is about a mix of things. We see various things work for us. A series like Vikings, having that exclusive and builds a following is very, very powerful for us. Very, very powerful for acquisition, very, very powerful to bring customers on board. But then also a series like Friends or Grey's Anatomy, it's not exclusive with us. It's on other platforms as well. It's not a brand new series that's just come out. Two of our top consumed shows. So, I think it's about having a mix. And I think the beauty in our world, in an OTT world, is you have data. You have various data sources available to us. You have your consumption. So you can see what content works, what content doesn't work. You can invest in the right areas. You can de-invest in the right areas. And then it's also about using the market data that's there available to you. We look at, we were doing it this week, looking at certain contents. We look at Google search trends. It's such a democratized way of understanding demand without relying on any agency to tell me. So we're sat there looking this week at Google search trends around assets, because we know if the search trends is there, the demand is there, we can pick up the keywords. So, it's that mix. It's really about finding what people are looking for, experimenting with it on your platform, and then focusing around those areas. But you need the mix. So I think the one thing we have seen work is if you sit there just with a library of content that's older and non-exclusive, people are also going to tire. You need to have variation, you need to have mix, you need to have new, exciting shows to keep people inspired.
Okay. Tracy, you're nodding in agreement. You're nodding in agreement. So
I am nodding in agreement. I think that we're all really aligned. I think There's not a one-size-fits-all answer to your question. Of course, from a content owner and content IP owner's point of view, exclusivity is a main driver for revenue for us, because as you say, acquisition costs or costs of content are not reducing, but equally the demand for quality content, the demand for sort of exceptional storytelling is increasing, and the market is saturated with ways that you can distribute your content. So you need to window in order to establish a workflow for that content, to really understand where it works best for you and your business. That's not, I completely agree with Danny. I think that we have content, we have, I don't know, The Daily Show or South Park that comes direct out of the US on Comedy Central, and we play it. But comes directly out of the US day and date, and that's content that is newsworthy and very topical and current, that has to be seen immediately, and we carve out a window in an exclusive environment for that, and we ride on the wave of like a global noise when those things happen. Equally, we have, as Danny says, Paw Patrol on Nickelodeon, which is, there are brand new episodes and an exclusive window for that content, but we equally have a library of that well-loved, heavily consumed content that we can distribute in other ways as well. So I don't think should all of our content be exclusive in one place? No, but there is absolutely a need and a place for that type of content.
On the same topic, you said that you gave an interview, the example of the series that you bought for Ramadan, Shabab al-Bom, example Fuza Sah. So obviously for you, from what I understood, exclusivity in Arabic content is very important. And when you start going after series, you're basically going after the bread and butter of all the traditional broadcasters. So are you going to basically go to your board and say, I need a lot of money because I now need to go in and compete with basically getting the first window for original productions? Or are you picking a more niche strategy and saying, the typical stuff, I'll let the money from the traditional broadcasters go to it, but I'm going to, based on my data, I'm going to identify niches and go after them? What's the approach?
Integral approach is maybe a mix of all of that. What have we done is, for an example, when we cooperate with Stars Play, we have taken the Western content, which is they got, with all of the variety they got. And we went into the Arabic content where most of the provider lack the Arabic content. So we went to all of the first window in the Egyptian cinema, and we got so far about 60% of the first window of all of the Egyptian movie, which is catering for the whole Arab nations.
Who did you compete with on that?
Say again?
Who are you competing against when you're getting the first window?
We were competing with NBC, Rotana, and others who are free to air, okay? Where we brought it as video on demand, okay? As a video on demand, we brought it that it's exclusive. The first window is exclusive for 6 months for the subscriber of Joey.
And then it goes to free to air? After
that, it will go on the sequence, second and third, and after that.
So do you see yourself taking sort of the role of traditionally what was the pay, what used to be called the pay window? Is that where you see yourself playing?
What we are trying to do, not that. We are trying to cater for all segments. For an example, this is what we have done with the exclusivity of the Egyptian movie. We went and we start to do our own production. Our own production in a sense that we have produced 10 different movie series, and all of it is Saudi, which is, there is a huge gap in this domain, that the Saudi content is not there, the GCC content is not there. So we went into a mega production where we produce alone more than 10 series. Okay. This is in a time horizon of 9 months, which is very short to do all of this in a specific timing like that. We went and we start to collect a lot of exclusive content. For an example, we went into one of Rotana production, which is Shabab al-Bomb. This is a series. It was the 7th season or the 8th season when we broadcast it. It's dedicated for juniors between 10 years to 15. And in the first day, usually this is broadcasted by Rotana during the prime time in Ramadan. And after that, after this, each broadcasting finish, immediately it go to the YouTube. So the majority of those kids used to go to the YouTube. We went and we acquired it as an exclusive content for Joey. And it was not last Ramadan, the Ramadan before.
Okay, but you took it exclusive. That doesn't exist anywhere else, as far as I understand, right?
It exists with Rotana as
Still.
a broadcaster.
Okay.
After they finish on the digital platform, it's only available with us.
Do you think that's sustainable, or that might change?
Let me tell you my story, okay, which is really funny. I don't know. This gave us a lot of directions. So we went and we broadcast this. We took it as exclusive for Ramadan and the month after. On the digital platform, it's only available at Joey. We were launching Joey as a platform, as an application, so we were encouraging people to come and subscribe. One of my major concerns was that the gate of registration, that I needed to be extremely wide, and this was my direction to my team. So my team started to design this application, and they have done a 40,000 concurrent registration. That means 40,000 registration on the same time, which is not anywhere you could find that there is a 40,000 people come on the same moment to do a registration. And the first day of Ramadan, my system got a crashed before even Maghrib prayer. The reason behind it, I got hit by 770,000 subscription concurrent because of those kids. Okay? So this is where I went and I acquired this series, okay, for the forthcoming season, due to the fact that this is something, there is a high demand on it. We weren't aware that such a content is highly demanded.
Okay. Since you brought up...
Due to the fact it's only dedicated for kids who are between 10 to 15. And this series, okay, have been there for 7 years on a row. So I went and we bought it for 4 years on a row. And we went and we took those kids who are participating as an actor, and we have designed for them the second level of series, which is we design it, we produce it, and we broadcast it. The reason behind it, those people who was 10 up to 15, after 8 seasons, after 8 years, they are becoming on the early 20s. So we design a new series for them in the 20s, and we start producing it, and we broadcast it during last Ramadan. All of this is because of our content VP, Mr. Tony Saab. He was the one who was leading all of these efforts. So thank you, Tony.
You can request a promotion now, I think. Or at least a raise. Okay, since you mentioned numbers, or to any of you actually, are any of you in a position to share with us any numbers, subscribers, viewers, by platform, by country, by anything? We lack numbers so much in this region, and everyone says it's all wonderful or it's bad, but nobody gives us numbers. So, Hamoud, I'll start with you. Do you want to share any numbers?
I'm sharing nothing.
Mano, surprise me. Numbers.
Two parts. One for the content part of it. About 5 years ago, we started producing originals for our pay platform for the Hindi. And what we actually did was we've actually mastered the role around dubbing. And we dubbed those back for, as a second feed, as an original for Alvan, and it was, again, syndicated to other channels, specifically in Africa. We had a co-production with RTL for Ivory Coast for our next Hindi production, wherein we actually merged a few of their actors in the script level. Last 20 months, we have actually produced 3 Arabic, and one was aired on CBC, and Shahid has taken it up for the first window. We've very consciously kept windowing out. We said that, as Zee Alwan, we wouldn't take it. We would open up to anybody who picks up. And as we speak, I have my next Arabic production on floor, completing in 10 days. There is a lot of scope for partnerships in the market, provided, either you step in and take up the content and provide a window, or you step back and let others take it. The problem in this market, or one of the challenges is, we love to, have the cake and eat it to concept. I want everything. Not going to work. We need to have partnerships. In terms of numbers, I'll give you surprising figures about South Asian platform. We actually soft launched it in February of this year. And as we speak, we have in excess of 70,000 paying subs.
In UAE? Or?
In UAE alone.
How does that compare to how many you expected to have?
We had no expectations, honestly, because if you really look at, if you look at what's happening is people search by name of content, not by a platform. And if you look at the amount of piracy going around, these are available in some formats out in those pirated feeds, all of this content. But there are still paying subs, and we're registering, and because of this, I think we're going to up it. We hope to cross the 100,000 mark in the next 3 months.
Okay. Anyone else going to give us some numbers?
I'll share 2 numbers with you. I think it goes back to Manoj's point earlier, which is interesting, is that nearly 70% of our consumption happens on one big screen or another. This, I think the OTT got immediately linked to being mobile. And I think OTT is no longer about niche for mobile. It's become the main viewing experience in the home. And you touched on it earlier. Some of these productions are amazing. They're in HD, the quality. So it's become a main screen experience more and more over time.
Was it for you in Stars Play, Danny? Was it in the Middle East? Was it ever a mobile experience?
It was when we only had mobile apps, no, very early on we realized when we looked at our churn, the first year was tremendously difficult. It was a year of what we call 25s. We talked about this before, 25 subscribers a day, 25% churn rate, 25% conversion rate. And it was a horrible year, and there were all sorts of reasons for that. But one of the big ones that we saw in our feedback when we looked at our customers is, you're up against a player like Netflix, who brings a gold standard. You're up against a player like YouTube, who brings a gold standard. So when a consumer comes to your service, they expect you to be on their Samsung TV. They expect you to be on LG. When you're not, it's an immediate reason for them to step away from your platform. So for us, among other learnings, one of the key things for us very, very early on was to get that device ubiquity. So when someone subscribes, they're not disappointed when they go to a certain device.
What's the second number?
The second number, because we've declared it publicly, so there's no reason not to, is now in terms of...
That doesn't count.
Okay, I'll
numbers that are already out there don't count.
two.
Amanda, Tracy, any numbers?
Well, I would certainly like to be able to share audience data with you. Frustratingly, not available in this region in pay. Still, we can have a different conversation about that, which is why, to be honest, we make such inroads locally in this region into digital. So, Fatafit now has a digital and social footprint of 13 million. And as I said earlier, we're able to monetize that. I guess a useful stat, although it's not from this region, is that 67% of our live streams off linear in the States are for people under 32, which we find extremely reassuring.
I mean, from a linear broadcast point of view, we're in the same boat. Although that said, we do externally sourced data for our channel, so it's not the entire market, but at least some, so that we can extrapolate and kind of at least have some kind of guide to consumption. So thank you, Nick. But what I will say, which I find one of the most interesting data points that we have, and we've talked about production and local content. So we produce for Comedy Central here locally 20 odd hours a year of local production, and obviously Kids' Choice Awards was our first kids event that was broadcast on Nickelodeon, and that in itself claimed 4 times more viewers than any other piece of Nickelodeon content in this region from the data that we've been able to capture. So I think that we all know how important local content is on our platforms, and so that, I mean, that's really what I've got in my in my hand to give you. But I think it's interesting.
Thank you. Vijaya, do we have 5 more minutes? No? 2 more minutes. Does that include question time? Oh. Okay, so 2 quick rapid-fire questions. One on sports rights. Hamoud, maybe you can answer that one in 30 seconds or less. There's a big push to change sports rights from a MENA-wide footprint to country by country. There is no obvious means of transmitting country by country without spillage in the region other than through OTT. Is this something that you think will drastically change the OTT landscape, or do you see it not happening? 30 seconds or less so Vijaya doesn't shoot us.
I believe that very soon we're going to see a sort of a big development in the sport domain and the way broadcasting is going to take place. And we're going to see that all means of broadcasting going to be utilized, where I believe that we're going to see broadcasting via digital platform. We're going to see it via the DTH and even some more advanced issues. And we're going to see a major participant of a new body gonna do a lot of things in the near future. And I'm talking near future in 2-3
future
months.
in Saudi, future always means the next few months, right? So this is
very soon
from reliable sources. Okay. Danny, also 30 seconds or less. Netflix, Disney, Apple, everybody who can launch OTT is launching OTT. When they're getting content, they're trying to take usually global rights, no longer just US rights. How are you going to counter that?
I think in 30 seconds or less, we'll, where possible, we'll try to partner. Because I think we can partner with some of these brands coming into the region. It's, as we all know in this room, it's a tough region to monetize. It's a tough region to grow. So I think number 1 is partnership. And number 2 is if we can continue our position, we can continue our revenue growth. We become a very viable partner for people like Viacom, for people like Discovery to work with and keep giving us their content and being able to monetize that. So I think that's how we'll fight.